Chris Maliszewski, founder of Hail Hail Auctions and co-host of Walking Tall podcast.
Yeah, well,
Cool.
Walking Tall movement. So it's an entire mental health advocacy platform.
Yes, we're going to get into that.
And I could talk a little bit about that.
We're
but
going to
I do host the Walking Tall podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have another podcast for Hail Hail Auctions too called The Appeal. So I'm
excited for this conversation because I think it's a bunch of founders, entrepreneurs, some inspiring ones listening to the show. And I think there's like two cool aspects of this conversation. One is the work that you do with Hail Hail Auctions, right? I think there's just some things that we all can learn from that. I'm excited to learn about that.
Thank you.
And then two is the Walking Tall movement, the things that you've been through and what inspired that, and the mental health side of that. I think is going to be cool to talk through. So let's get into it, man. So I, just for the audience to understand, obviously you raise money for community building organizations. What does that look like? I think auction, like, give me a fuck, give me a fuck, give me a fuck. You know what I mean? Like, you don't do that stuff, right?
No, so I'll tell you, that's the first question I always get asked when I tell people an auctioneer. They're like, oh, so you could talk like then and I'm like, no, not exactly, because there's different types of auctioning skills, right? There's your commodity auctions, which are houses, cattle, cars, grain, farm assets, things of that sort, right? That's where you'll see like the and there's a cadence to it.
I don't know how people understand what they're saying.
I don't either. You have to go to a lot of auctions to be able to pick that dialect up in a sense, right? And truthfully, a lot of it is just gibberish, and they're just speaking gibberish in between numbers. Yeah. It's like, and so that's one aspect of auctioning. I focus more on the charity community building organization auction. And what that is more of a show, right? It's more about engaging the crowd. It's more about providing some form of entertainment that loosens the crowd up enough to give more money to the organization, which we're there to raise funds for. So I'm more of myself on the stage when I'm working for different community building organizations. And there's a lot of work leading up to the event to ensure that, how I promote the organization the night of is in line with how they want to be promoted.
Right. Yeah. So is it like you're creating the actual event, or is it like they have an event and they're going to bring you to it to raise the money?
Well, it's both. Thank you for asking, right? I can help with the event planning process. I've ran several fundraising events on my own within former employers and things of that sort. So I do have an event planning portion of what it is I can provide to other community building organizations. But in some cases, more times than not, organizations are reaching out to me because they have a gala in place. It's been a historical event for them.
Sure.
And they need somebody with my skill set and license, frankly, because you have to have a license to be an auctioneer to do what it is they need most. And that's to help raise money the night of a big event.
Interesting. And what's the secret to getting money from people? Like, obviously, and what are we talking about? How much is it, like 20 grand at a time, 50 grand, millions? Like, what's the typical kind of raise?
The most money I've helped raise the night of is $1.9 million.
Wow.
But we've also raised as little, and I say little, not to trivialize the amount, but upwards of 25 or 30,000. Right. It's really all indicative on the size of the organization which I'm supporting, their past giving history, and then in many facets, it's really reliant upon the money in the room, right? How much work is done ahead of time to get quote unquote big spenders there to support the mission, to support the efforts, to support the organization, and then it's just my role to maximize the giving, right? And what I often say is, as an auctioneer and somebody who does what it is I do, if there's somebody in the room who's going to always give $20,000, let's just say they're a $20,000 giver, I'm going to try to get them to 25.
You're right.
Right? I'm not going to try to get them to go from 20 to 100. That's an impossibility. Sure. But where somebody with my skill set, my expertise, my license has benefit and basically is an ROI, basically, right? Is where I can take that $20,000 giver to 25 or that 500 to 1,000, right?
Right.
Just with little tips, tools, tactics, engagement, authenticity wins above all else in my mind. So just promoting the organization from the heart often proves to be helpful, and others give more money than they otherwise usually would.
Right. So what are you doing? And I'm thinking as we go through this, what other founders can learn from too, because ultimately I think if it's storytelling, it's edutaining, it's inspiring, it's motivating people to take action, whether we're trying to win customers, raise money, get investors in our company. What is it that you're actually doing? Like, paint us a picture of, like, you're on stage. Are you talking to the audience? Do you have certain props? Like, how does that work?
No, great question. So there's a lot of work leading up to an event, right? Where I meet with a committee or a director of development or an executive director of a charity or a different type of community building organization. And I say community building organizations because there's school athletic departments, there's parent teacher organizations, PTOs, PTAs that aren't necessarily 501c3. but I support them anyways because they're community building, right? And so there's a lot of work leading up to an event where we understand what's the mission of the organization, what's the intent of the evening, is there a theme, what types of things do we have to auction or sell, right? So I could prepare a script that basically leans into what it is we're trying to raise the money for, and then maximize and leverage what it is we have to offer in quote unquote a quick sale, right? And so there's a lot of work leading up to it. There's dry runs, there's on-site visits, there's understanding who some of the quote unquote big givers are in the room. So during cocktail hour or kind of a social aspect, I can go introduce myself to them and thank them for being there and let them know that, hey, I'm looking forward to working with them tonight. Right. So it's a lot of relationship building from the moment you get contracted or hired or even engaged with, to understand not only to decide if I could support that organization, but to also decide if it's an organization I want to support, right? I think that's one great thing about what it is I do as an entrepreneur and as a kind of working for myself in a sense is there's a billion charities, there's a billion community building organizations out there, and they're not all to say that they're not trying to make the world a better place, but there's some that don't jive with my morals, my values. And so I have that opportunity, right? So but building relationships is critical, understanding what the intent of the evening is, and then understanding what the goal is as well, right? What do we want to raise in this evening? Well, we want to raise $250,000. Okay, well, how much did you raise last year? Well, 30,000, right? Well, it's not a good fit, right? In some capacity. So you're really just kind of vetting and being vetted. And then once that engagement is established, right, then it's really about building relationships. And what I do uniquely, unlike many auctioneers in our market here in the Chicagoland area, is I become invested in that organization, right? I volunteer for some of them. I have them on my own podcast, The Appeal, to promote their organization, to create awareness and give them content to promote their event and maybe some of the auction items we're going to have ahead of time, right? So there's things that I've had to do differently because there are many other auctioneers in our industry and in our market who have been established for 20, 30 years, who have great relationships. And so the fact that I'm able to now be up to and with the times in a sense, right, has been able to separate me, right? Like, many of the auctioneers now going, now in our market have been doing it, like I said, for a long time. They don't have a podcast. They don't have social media content to engage, right? And so I've had to separate myself in many facets because I'm kind of that new kid on the block.
Right. It reminds me of, I've got one back here. Let's see. Crack one of these open. Liquid Death.
Yeah.
I got some in the fridge, but I'm not going to go in the fridge right now.
I love Liquid Death, man.
I'll give you one to go if you want.
Yeah.
If you want one now, I can give it to you, but it's a little warm.
I got my McDonald's Coke.
Okay, you're good. You got your Coke.
Yeah.
What you're speaking to is just differentiation. It's how do you stand out in a crowded marketplace?
Yep.
I think Liquid Death has done a good job of that. You're doing a good job of it when your business, because it's like, the customer can choose from a lot of different companies. And especially when you got legacy companies, right? They've been doing it for 10, 20, 30 years. How do you now separate yourself from the pack and almost position yourself as something completely different? And that's what we try to help companies do as well, right? You just need that. You have to have that in content, podcast, your style, how you invest yourself in the organization where some other people may not do that. All of those things, competitive advantages. That's a big one for people in companies, because they're like, man, it's so competitive. And they'll be like, we do something a little bit different. But a lot of times what they tell me is like, it's our customer service, or we care, or it's like, that's not a real differentiator. Everyone says that, right? So you got to have something that truly is tangible and truly is not just like, it's my personality. It's like that maybe is an aspect of it, but it's got to be, the customer has to see value in it, right? And they see value from you being invested in an organization, from getting content, from doing the podcast, from being out there. Those are real-time valuable things.
100%. And the one thing that I'm not, right? And I understand the need for it in business, right? But I'm not extremely transactional, right? And I think that's kind of what you're speaking to, is being ingrained, being invested, and allowing others to be ingrained and invested in what it is you do, right? It means the world of difference when you're trying to create long-term clients and or long-term relationships that turn into business, right?
Yeah.
The auctioneering business, the fundraising business is transactional in many times. Like you need an auctioneer to show up for a couple hours, do his job, pay him his invoice, and then you don't see him again until next year. Yeah. Well, I think and I believe that by ingraining myself, I've been able to establish and set myself apart and keep those long-term clients because they want to keep coming back on the podcast. They want me to show up on site and take photos and video and promote them on social media on my own platforms, whereas not many other people are doing that right now.
I'm sure, and I haven't been to any of your events, but I'm sure that the audience feels that, right? I'm sure they feel that like, this guy's just not getting up here and being like, all right, here's, what we got going on, and you want to donate and this, and this. And I think they probably feel that like you've been ingrained a little bit and you have confidence and care in what you're actually selling or trying to raise money for, right? It's not just like, and I think it's the same if you're doing a podcast and you have sponsors. It's kind of obvious when you have a sponsor that you're like, I don't ever use this thing, it's crap, I just want the money, versus I really like this product and I'm excited to promote it because I use it and I've tried 100%. It. And you know what I mean?
Like man, I'm telling you,
you can feel that shit, right?
Of course. I have a sponsor on The Appeal, which is my podcast promoted by Hail Auctions, where we focus and we bring on community building organizations, and it's a bi-weekly live stream show. But I have a sponsor now that's my tattoo artist. Okay, Speakeasy Custom Tattoo in Chicago, the Wicker Park neighborhood. The owner, Patrick Cornolo, he's the guy who does all my work, right? And as we got to know each other, as I sat in this chair and told him what it is I do, he's like, hey, maybe we could partner, right? And now before you know it, before my shows as a sponsor, I'm talking about Speakeasy from a personal perspective, right? Like what exactly it means to me to have them support me, but also to use their services too, right? Obviously, we all have bills to pay and we all need resources in terms of finances. And so you have to take some sponsorships at times that feel a little less authentic, but exactly that. And then when I stand on stage as an auctioneer and I tell folks, hey, I volunteered in a class a couple weeks ago and here's what I saw. And here's why your volunteerism or your donations are so important. Here's what I believe, right? People get taken aback like, whoa, this guy actually gets it, right? This guy spent the time to understand what it is we do. This person is not just on stage, flaunting and being flashy, trying to raise money. He gets what it's about. And in return, I could be so much more authentic and I could be so much more present and so much more engaging as opposed to just trying to sell a trip or an autographed item or some tickets that I do, week in and week out. It's more about supporting the mission than making the money.
Right. I think it probably seems like you're on stage as an employee almost of the organization versus like some random person they brought in to do this event, right? What do you think, speaking of money, though, I know it's all about the money, or it's not all about the money, but when it comes to, I'm thinking founders listening to this right now, what have you learned over the last year or two or so on what it is that allows you to get people to separate from their money and spend it? Because ultimately that's what we're trying to do as businesses. We need to get people to separate from their money and put it into something that they deem is valuable, either to grow their business, to support a cause, to move them forward. What are maybe a couple things that you've learned about maybe some psychology type things or just best practices or things that you learned about humans?
Yeah, I think storytelling is essential, right? Yeah. Having a mission behind what it is you're asking for, or even what it is you're selling, goes a long way, particularly when you're a founder or an entrepreneur, right? It's a little different in my industry because I, as you said, become a pseudo employee or a representative of that various organization which I'm supporting. But if I don't have a story to tell, if I don't have a keynote speaker before I do my auction, if there's not a really powerful video that's impactful that causes people to lose their breath and shed a tear or maybe laugh a little, it makes my job a lot harder, right? So I'm still the same guy week in and week out, but a lot of what makes more or less money is how it's positioned. So the storytelling aspect is essential.
Do you think that, they say that people buy on emotion, justify with logic? Do you find that when you're raising money for people and organizations, the emotion piece is why they actually buy?
Well, I feel like the emotion piece is why they're there, right? So there's a difference. I think getting them in the room, having them buy a ticket for a plated dinner or whatever the outfit is, right? Getting them there is the emotion. And then having the story or the justification. With your $5,000 donation, we're going to be able to purchase X amount of toolboxes for the mechanics, which this charity supports, right? Justifying it, quantifying it, and letting folks know how their money is impactful really allows for somebody to say, well, hey, that makes sense, right? As opposed to saying, do I have $1,000? Yeah, okay, $1,000 from Alex, right? And you're like, well, what the hell is my $1,000 doing, right?
That's such a great point.
So justifying it and quantifying it allows people to say, well, I was going to give $1,000, but this auctioneer is really good, and he's telling me that with the $2,500 gift, it's going to go that much further. Let me give $2,500.
Yeah, man.
Right? It's not just asking. It's not just having fun on stage and being an idiot, like I say at times, in a good way, right? It's really doing the work, understanding what the messaging is, quantifying the asks, and then being relentless and innovative for it.
Yeah. I love that, man. I think that applies so much to sales calls, pitch decks, and whatever you're trying to do. You kind of think about people showing up to the calls. You know, for us, let's say we do in-house content marketing, team building for companies. Oftentimes they show up because they're like, they feel empowered. They were some type of emotional, like, yeah, I want to be able to create content, build my brand. And I don't want to have a marketing agency do it. I want to do it internally. Like it becomes part of their identity a little bit. I'm sure in your case too, of like, I want to be the giver, the philanthropy. You know, I want to, that's a part of who I am.
Yep.
They show up. And then to your point, you've got to be able to show the logic and the numbers and the data. And here's what, if you give us money, this is what it's going to go towards.
Exactly.
And these are the results that we can expect, or what's actually going to happen. That's such a good sales lesson, man, and presentation lesson.
Yeah.
Emotion and then logic.
100%.
It's just got to be, well, how do you look at storytelling? Anything there? Like when you're preparing some of the videos and you're getting on stage, like, are you thinking about where the audience is? Like, how do you kind of think about storytelling?
Yeah, storytelling is essential, right? Having, impact stories, right? It's great and it's all nice and good for a CEO, a founder, an executive director, an employee to say, yeah, this organization is great because, right?
Yeah. We all companies do on their website.
We're biased.
Number one.
We're biased, but let me hear from somebody that your work has impacted, right? And that's where I said earlier, a keynote speech, a video testimony, having somebody in the room, it's a participant of various programmings that this organization may offer, to let them speak to how this organization, their mission, their work has impacted their lives for the positive or greater good is phenomenal, right? It makes my job so much easier. Great example. I just supported an organization called Oak Leiden a couple months ago. And before I did my auction, they support individuals with developmental disabilities, both physical and mental, right? They have group homes, they have programming, they do great work. Before I did my auction, their choir sang. Made my job so much easier. It got people going. They could care less what I was saying. They were just ready to give because they saw what their money was supporting. It was supporting an opportunity for 15 people to sing their hearts out in a place that was not judgmental. They could be themselves. And it was like, now who wants to support us so we could do more of that? Right? So having authenticity, having storytelling and impact statements, whether it's in business and fundraising, is essential in my opinion, because it really brings to what it is this organization is promoting to life.
Like music just kind of does that. It moves you, you know. And
we could talk for hours on music.
You know, like you're in your car, you're driving, whatever, you're working out, you're walking, and music can just, I would say it can just take you places. Like it can just take you to a whole different world, good or bad sometimes, 100%. Right? But it's like, man, you can put in a song and it can take you back in time to a certain place you're at. It can take you to the future and where you want to be. And you're envisioning all these things. I got that. I'm going to do this. You know, like music is really special like that.
Dude, so I don't think you may know, but I'll tell you, Hail Hail Auctions was named after my favorite song of all time. Pearl Jam.
I did see that, yeah.
Yeah, so Pearl Jam is my favorite band. I've seen them all over the world 77 times.
Wow. Geez.
And as you were saying, their music, whatever reason, just emotes happiness for me. It just is my happy place. And whatever it is they're singing about, I could relate it to my life. And Hail Hail has always been my favorite song. And as I became an auctioneer and I was thinking about starting my own company, I started to look, well, what am I going to name this? And I'm like, wait a minute, Hail Hail is my favorite song. Pearl Jam has impacted me so positively. How can I tribute them in a way that's relevant to auctioning, right? So now my final call is Hail Hail, you bought it.
That's cool.
Right? Yeah. Hail Hail, we got a winner, right? And so they don't know why I'm saying it, right? But it's something that's a shtick in a sense that people could say like, hey, I kind of like that guy, right? He's got something to him, right? Yeah. And that's a key to auctioneering too, is being memorable, right? Because what happens in event planning is, you know, your attendees, you want them to come back year to year. And they're like, hey, is that auctioneer coming back? He was great, right? Or, hey, that auctioneer coming back? Because if he is, I'm not coming next year, right? So having a sort of personality on stage, and I started with my company's name and being a tribute to my favorite band.
Because some of them are probably just really boring. And it's just like, all right, I'm going to this event, and it's like the auctioneer just sucks.
Yeah, I'll tell you,
it makes a big difference. Same with a keynote speaker, right? It's like, God.
So the auctioneering business, particularly here in the Chicagoland area, is what we call pale and stale, right? There's a lot of old white guys in the industry.
Dinosaurs,
and they're not that they're not good, right? Some of them are the best of the best, but some of them it's like, hey, maybe your time has passed, or maybe you need to pass the torch to.
Well, they haven't evolved with the times, you know.
Well, that's a great, evolution is a really great point because, again, there's there's many auctioneers out there. I'm the only one in the marketplace with a podcast right now. Right. And some of these auctioneers, because they are pale and stale, don't have the savvy, the wherewithal, the ability, the understanding how to leverage social media, how to have a podcast to promote.
And just their willingness to get uncomfortable and try something wildly different is the biggest thing.
Being uncomfortable is critical.
And they don't have it for now. They'll either phase out, retire without ever doing it, or people will start to catch on and be like, we got to do some type of media and why not a podcast, but yeah, take advantage of it while you got it.
Hell yeah, man. And that's the thing. And with the organizations I support, right? In many cases, many of them don't have their own marketing team, don't have their own ability to promote on social media.
Yeah.
They're doing the legwork on a daily basis to make our world a better place. And they're not worried about promoting themselves. Right. So let me promote it, just like the work you do.
Totally, man. Competitive advantage. I'll throw one thing out here and I'm curious to get your take, but I think it's going to be valuable for the audience. Talking about customer success stories and like driving the emotion from that, not just hearing it from you as the owner, as the organization, the business, but hearing it from people that you've made an impact on. We're a big believer in that. We've got video testimonials, that kind of stuff. One thing I've been doing recently, and we filmed a couple of videos the other day, actually last week, but now they're had been edited this week, is the not so successful client stories. And the why you shouldn't work with us. And I thought that was like an interesting, I saw a LinkedIn post from a guy I know, and he was talking about how buyers are skeptical and, you really got to talk about the other side of things too, not just the good stuff. So what we did is we recorded a couple of videos and we were like, you've seen all these client success stories, like you've seen them on our website, LinkedIn, like, we get good results, but are there examples of when it didn't go well? Or like, are there certain cases where we brought on a client and we didn't get them amazing results? And of course, we all have that, right? We all make mistakes. And so our thing was like, let's put that on video and let's not talk about the specific company and like air some dirty laundry out, obviously, but just talk about like, hey, here's a couple examples where we fell short of where we wanted to be from a result standpoint. And here's what we learned from it. And here's how we're approaching it next time to make sure it doesn't happen. And here's who we're not the right fit for. And here's also who we're the right fit for. So I think it's a balance. You need that like wall of social proof and testimony and videos and the impact you've made. But I think this is also causing me in the past few weeks to really think about, are we showcasing a little bit of the other side?
Sure.
Because the buyers, when they look at it, they want the whole picture. They're going to be a little bit skeptical. They're going to want to see the exciting stuff. They're going to want to see, well, what if this doesn't work stuff? And I think I'm curious to hear from your perspective what you think on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And admittedly, I've lost clients for various reasons.
As we all have.
And the truth of the matter is it all reverts back to what it is they want from me, right? Yeah. And what it is I could provide. Admittedly, like I'm a passionate guy. I'm very forward in my personality, and that's off-putting at times to some organizations. Some organizations want a transactional auctioneer, somebody who's just going to show up, do the job, and get out and not cause any waves in the wake, if you will, right? Just do your thing and get out. And so that's probably not a good fit for me. And when I start to, when I have had experiences like that with different organizations, we've agreed, hey, it's probably not the best thing, right? Or understanding where it is you want me to be, and then I could make the decision if I could support you, and vice versa. And then again, there are times where we have goals that the mark isn't met, right? And again, I have to be steadfast in my confidence to know that, hey, I'm the same guy that blew out goals and also hasn't achieved them. So, what can I learn from the experience to help that organization next year exceed their goal? So anytime it's feedback, whether it's positive or negative, it's just information in my mind, and it's what I learn from it and how I use it to my benefit for the next client, for the next year, what have you. But of course, there's people who don't like what it is I do and how I do it, and that's okay. That's why there's other auctioneers.
That's right. Do you see, I think what you do is unique. How do you see AI impacting what you do over the next several years, if any?
I believe AI can help with storytelling above all else, right? Hey, can you tell me, here's a website. Can you give me a few snippets? What's some impact statements I could make, right? Totally. So it may help expedite some of my planning efforts, but again,
analyze data. Stuff,
exactly right. But again, as I mentioned, like this is a relationship business. This is a people business. I can't imagine it taking over this industry. An AI robot maybe sooner or later could be an auctioneer. I don't know, but I hope not.
To pull it off like you, I think that'd be pretty tough. Like I think to get it to where it's like you, that'd be pretty. I'd be impressed.
But
there is humanoid robotics, and I think in the next 10 years or less, they're saying it will be somewhat common practice to have like a robot in people's houses. Probably people that have a lot of money. where like, you know, it's doing laundry, it's doing dishes.
Like Small Wonder. You remember that movie, that TV show? Vicky. You got to look it up. Small Wonder was an old TV show in the 80s when we were kids. And she was a robot, and like an adopted robot. And she was their housekeeper.
Oh, yeah.
She would lift the couch. And,
yeah,
exactly.
So I think that's but it's like, are those good enough to get on stage, like move people? And like, probably not. You know what I mean? So
how can a robot be invested in the mission of an organization, right?
Yeah,
that's how I feel. And like when I volunteer for organizations, like I show up. Yeah, you know, like I'm there. And so I think it can help in some capacities, the data analytics, kind of the event planning side of things, right? Expedite some of that. But when it comes down to it, like, you know, when there's 500 people in a room with a paddle in their hand, they're probably going to want to see a smile as opposed to a robot.
Yeah,
you know?
No, totally, man. Yeah. Totally. That's how I look at it too. So how do you make money from this? Do you do it? Is it like a fee per? Do you take part of the whatever you raise? Like, how does it work? I'm curious.
No, so I'm a flat fee, right? Different auctioneers bill different ways.
Yeah.
Again, I want to raise as much money for the organization I'm working with as possible. So if I were to take a percentage of whatever it is it raised, it'd be great for me in some capacities, right? But it would be a detriment to that organization. Yeah. And so I'm not here to gouge. I'm not here to, exploit organizations and their crowds for my personal benefit. Yeah. I know my value, and so I ask for it. And my job is to raise as much money as possible, regardless of whatever it is I make. And so, but once they come on the podcast, it's part of my services, right? So it's a one flat fee package where you get me as an auctioneer, you get a podcast appearance, you maybe get a couple volunteer opportunities for me, right? And with that being said, right, for lack of a better term, to support my lifestyle, right? I need less clients over X amount of time because I'm not as transactional. And I know year in and year out, I'll have the same participating partners as opposed to like just chasing a job and chasing a job. You know?
I bet you. I know the business you started last year, 2024.
Yeah, 2024. I hit a year in January.
Congrats, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, dude, it's not an easy road, but it's a fun one. It's fun. First couple of years were tough.
It's tough.
But I think with you, like you said, man, you start to build up more referrals, brand recognition. People come back to you, recurring clients, because they're going to always need to raise money to a certain extent to keep the organization going. And you've done a good job. They're likely to come back. So that's
I hope.
Cool.
Yeah, I have, a year and a half in, I have my biggest month ahead of me in terms of partnerships in November, right? I have the most events in a year and a half booked, which is a good sign. Yeah, and I'm now starting to see returning clients. And as an auctioneer, when you hit the mark is when you walk off stage and they said, save the date for next year.
Exactly.
Right?
You're because like, boom, done.
Done, right? And that happens quite often now for me, which is great because I don't have to continue to network. Not that I don't enjoy it and I want to learn more about more organizations. But as I said, I could probably only support 30 to 40 organizations in a year. Sure. And the other thing about our industry, which is great, and my mentor, who is also an auctioneer, really ingrained this in me. The nice thing about what it is we do, we can only be in one place at one time, right? So as an auctioneer, I could only support an event from 6 to 10 p.m. every Saturday for 52 weeks. Yeah. There's 50 events on a Saturday in Chicago, and there's not enough auctioneers to support, right? So I have an opportunity, should I continue to want to grow my business or, expand in a sense. But right now I'm just having fun doing what it is I'm doing and just kind of letting that ride out, It's
definitely pros and cons to building a team versus staying solo. And there's I think it just comes down to what is the life that you want and what's going to make you happy and fulfilled. Yep. Most people are like, I got to do this. I got to scale. I got to, it's like, you don't. Like, you can create a great business now. We have all the tech at our fingertips, and one person can create an amazing business, a lifestyle business,
100%.
Or you can scale it, you know what I mean, and potentially sell it. So it's like, I think people need to close their ears and listen to themselves and what they want for themselves and their family, not what all the entrepreneurs or their friends or communities say. I think you have to really listen to what matters to you.
100%, right? The way I position it, I worked in government agencies for 20 straight years, as a college baseball coach for 10, and then as a park district professional for 10 before I started Hail Auctions, right? I'm an established adult at this point. I'm in my mid 40s. I have a lifestyle set. Yeah. I'm not trying to become a buku millionaire, right? So how I look at it from my perspective is what was I making while an employee for 10 years at an organization? What was my monthly take home? Well, how many clients do I need a month or a year to just maintain that? Yeah. I'm not putting pressure on myself to say I have to scale this to a 7-figure business. Sure. I've never made 7 figures in my life. Why would I think I could do it now? Not that I can't, or not that I wouldn't want to with proper planning. But I'm having so much fun and learning so much as a new entrepreneur a year into my business. I'm limiting the pressures and just enjoying the ride while maintaining some of those clients and some of those values that I've established.
I love that, man. Yeah. That's what it's about. If you can truly enjoy, I know it's cliche, but if you can enjoy the ride and the journey, you've made it. Yeah. That's it. Mm-hmm. You're going to have your ups and downs, and you're going to have your wins and losses. But if you're just really enjoying the day to day,
100%.
What else could you possibly ask? Like, that is it. You've made it.
I made it, man. And you know what this has also allowed for me, right? As we talked earlier, I'm a dad of 2. My daughter Josephine is 10. My son Lucas is 8. And to a fault, right? And maybe at times it's jeopardized business, or it's not had me be as present in my business, but I'm a present dad more than I've ever been in my life. Right. And whatever it is I make, you can multiply that by millions to say that's how much I feel like I'm making because I have time with my kids. Right. I can show up at 2:00 to pick them up from school when needed or when I want. I could take them to the pool. Like that to me is invaluable and what means the most aside from an invoice or making an extra dollar. Right.
Agree,
so that's been one of the greatest.
And they'll never forget that, by the way.
I hope not.
They will definitely not forget that.
I hope not. And that to me is what has established my success and validated my path right now to say, not only am I being able in some capacity to pay my bills, but I'm the best dad I've ever been.
There you go, man.
And that's priceless.
That's it.
Yeah.
What's the one thing, like from being an entrepreneur and founder over the last year or so, what's the one thing that maybe surprised you or that you've learned about yourself that you didn't expect maybe?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. How emotional I am, right? I think at times I could be very emotional. I can take things very personal, right? And I have to take a step back. I have to rely on my network and some of my foundational friends to say like, hey, is this me or is it business, right? Because I take everything personal, right?
Yeah.
And whether it's constructive feedback or it's, just a general comment, like whoa, wait a minute, what did that mean, right?
Yeah.
So learning how not to take that as personal and to really understand that it is business and that there are things to always be learned from it. It's not always a personal attack if negative, and it's not always a personal hype if positive, right? It's just a piece of information. True. So I've learned that I'm pretty emotional and I have to subside some of that at times to be present in business.
Speaking of the emotional side, Highland Park, Illinois.
Yeah.
What does that mean when I say that?
It gives me goosebumps.
Does it?
Yeah. It means a lot because I spent 10 years of my life in that community. I started in 2014 as a part-time employee after just leaving a 10-year college baseball coaching career. I joined the Park District of Highland Park in 2014 as a baseball community coordinator. And 10 years later, I was separated as the director of recreation. So I spent a lot of my life there. I gave all I had to that community. My children went through swim lessons and people's parties, and the list goes on and on. And I hold that community very close to my heart. But it also is now a community that also brings on trauma and brings on circumstances that I never wish to have been a part of. And so I have to do a good job of separating myself at times to protect my own mental health, after experiencing what I went through. For
anyone, we'll get it. If I don't know how comfortable you are talking about
it. Ask away, man.
Okay,
Ask
cool.
Away.
Just for if you're listening, like, what's Highland Park and why is this significant? It's a city here in Illinois, in the suburbs of Chicago, and there was a mass shooting there July 4th. On 4th of July, unfortunately. It's unfortunate on any day, but that's like the one day it's like, geez, really? And it was 3 years ago?
Yeah, 22.
Yeah, man, I remember that too. I mean, I was in St. Charles, and I think they canceled our fireworks that year because they were just like safety concerns. And I remember hearing about it, man. It's just like, I don't know, it just never gets easier hearing about those things, and you were in it. And so I'm curious, like, man, if you could take us back to, because we hear about it, it's like so sad, especially when there's kids involved. Like that really just as a dad, that crushes me, dude.
Yeah.
Like it really crushes me. Like it breaks me down, and I had to like kind of pull myself back up and be like, think positively, like keep moving forward. Like these people they got support, they're going to be fine. But man, it's just hard not to get down about it for a little bit, right?
Yeah. I think, my role that day certainly traumatized me and put me in a state of shock for many months. Not because I wasn't equipped to handle it, right? I think I went above and beyond that day and did some extraordinary things that put me in position to have my mental health at times in jeopardy, right? But I've been so fortunate in life to have such great experiences and such great support system that over time, it's taken 3 years, right?
Yeah.
That I've been able to change the narrative of that event in my own mind. I've been able to I've been afforded perspective, right? And now I look at that day, as horrific as it was. 7 people lost their lives, 48 were shot, countless amounts of people like myself were mentally harmed. But I look at it with fondness only because from it has come such a great life for me, because I value things so much differently. The perspective I've gained because of that journey, not only the day of the shooting, but my mental health healing, if you will, has allowed me to be in a place to be an entrepreneur, has allowed me to value things in so much different of a capacity than I ever have before, like spending time with my kids.
Were you, I want to get into more of this stuff too. Were you at the event, or like how, like you're working for the park district?
Yeah, I was the co-chair
like,
of the
curious,
parade.
Like almost like take us back. Like I'm curious, like how close were you to some of this stuff? Yeah. And not that we need to get like detail, but like.
It's okay. So, in my role at the park district, starting in about 2016 or 2017, I was the chair, the co-chair of the parade. Mm-hmm. So wow. I helped organize the entire event for 6 straight years. Hiring floats and entertainment and parking assignments and working with public works to make sure the streets were blocked off appropriately, little things like that.
Yeah.
And on that day, once again, I was the co-chair. I was the first one on site at 6 a.m., setting up parking spots and welcoming floats and truck drivers when they bring the beds of their, floats in, and welcoming family members to get on their floats. There was approximately 63 that day, of which I was responsible for all of them. Mm. And so, there was a lot of ownership that I put on myself for that day, just the traumatic experience that others had, and how can I help people overcome it because of my role within the organization. So when the shots were fired, I was approximately about a half a block away, maybe a block away. Jeez. On a diagonal route, if you will.
Did you guys know what it was as soon as it started happening?
Well, when the first rounds were fired, I had an employee of mine next to me because I was assistant director at the time. I had like 6 direct reports of full-time employees under my guide. And I had one of them next to me, and we kind of put our head down, and she said, "What was that? What was that?" And then it happened again. And I said, "Run." The first time the shots went off, I kind of thought, like, what asshole shoots fireworks at a parade, right? There's 10,000 people here. Fireworks aren't the place.
Yeah, it's kind of the day that you'd expect to hear a loud noise like that. Yeah,
and then in my role, I know, like, typically the color guard that led the parade would never shoot blanks, and so you're kind of like immediately trying to deduce, well, what was that?
Kind of weird, but you're also like, it's 4th of July, so
and then the second rounds were let off, and then I knew immediately, and then you heard the screams, and you saw the people panic, running, sprinting, throwing strollers, carrying kids, and in the aftermath, again, I was on site for 9 hours after the shots were fired. I had 13 staff members sheltering in place that I committed not leaving Highland Park until they were all safely home. We had 95 people still on our beach 5 hours after the shots were fired, and the killer was still on the loose, so I had to go evacuate that beach. There was a lot of things from a public safety perspective that I committed to doing to ensure the safety of others, and largely that was due to my role in the entire event, my role in the organization as the park district, assistant director at the time, and just being the person I am. I didn't want to see anybody hurt.
Right. Man, I imagine that probably took a while to kind of like not think about that every day and be.
I still think about it every day.
I would almost be emotional talking about it, but you probably talked about it so much now. It's been time. It's healed, right? But
I still think about it every day.
Do you?
Of course, it's something that I think will carry with me as long as I live. It was so funny, just having surpassed the 3-year anniversary. Of course, we have chat groups and we have text message threads with, other people who were present that day. And, what I say is it's gotten easier, but it's never going to be easy.
Yeah,
right?
That makes sense.
The time does heal in some capacity, but it also provides perspective. And kind of, as I said earlier, like I've been so fortunate to have a great support system, to have a great outlet in my entrepreneurship, to have a different perspective created due to that day. Because had that day never occurred, I'd probably still be working at the park district, like, living my life, waiting for a pension and retiring after 30 years in the same organization. But now I have such a gretter life ahead of me.
Why did that event cause you to say, I'm going to go for it and start my own thing and, be the entrepreneur founder?
Well, so 10 months after the shooting, there was another event in Highland Park where there was another alleged gun activity. And we had to shut down our facility again. It was about a 90-minute lockdown. The entire community of Highland Park was locked down. And it was at that time I had my first panic attack on the job site. I was having and experiencing some panic attacks prior to, in the immediacy after the event. And I was able to swallow them. I was able to kind of harness them in safe locations where nobody would see me.
Yeah.
But I had a panic attack at work on April 4th, 2023 for the first time. 4 days after that, I had to go see a general practitioner because I wasn't sleeping again. I was in a state of fight or flight. I was in shock.
Yeah.
And he tried to prescribe me. He did prescribe me some concerning mental health medications, of which I've never been on before in my life. I've been very fortunate. And it was at that time I took a leave of absence from my employer. I said, hey, I need time off.
Yeah.
I need to go get myself healthy. I need to better my mental health, my physical health. I just need a break. And I embarked on a really long journey with psychiatry and therapy to help me get to be where I'm at today. But unfortunately, the Park District wasn't in line with the amount of time it was taking. And so they terminated me.
Really?
Yeah. And so from there in January of 24, I was national news. I was on the front page of the Chicago Tribune.
Really?
I was on yahoo.com as being a mass shooting survivor, as an employee, being terminated due to the outcome and ramifications of that event. So the decision in some capacity was made for me.
Yeah.
You know, and truly, again, at the time it was traumatic. It was frustrating, angering, maddening. Like, I've given you 10 years of my life and you're just going to throw me away like that.
Especially after that. Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, again, I'm so thankful for that. And what it's also allowed for me to do, not only is build Hail Auctions and really be passionate about the Walking Tall movement, but it's given me such perspective, right? Like, not to say that I never will, but I don't ever want to work for anybody else again, right? Like, I don't trust anybody. And I don't mean that to say that I don't trust you. I don't trust anybody else with my future, right? The only person I can control is me. And I don't want to give anybody else any longer the power to dictate my future. And I allowed for that at 10 years as an employer, right? They call them the golden handcuffs for a reason, right? Like, 10 years, had a nice 6-figure salary, great benefits, like, I had a lot of sweat equity built up. So I had a little bit of freedom and flexibility in what it is I did. But I was still accountable to others and to an organization. Now I'm just accountable to myself and my clients. And I'm in so much more control than I ever was, which is so much better for my mental health.
That's really cool, man.
Yeah.
Good for you. I always say, I don't know if things happen for a reason, but I do know you can always find a reason in things.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I was just on another podcast, a mental health focused show, and he asked me the same question. He said, like, do you feel like you were put in that position for a reason? And I said, no, I don't think a higher being said, we're going to put Chris Maliszewski in the middle of this chaos and from it's going to come good. But what I can say is that I've been so lucky that leading up to that event as an athlete and as a coach and as a director and as a leader of people, I gained such great tools and perspective to overcome what it is I experienced. It just took me the amount of time it was going to take me. It may have taken you less or more. It may have taken somebody else. It just, I was on my own path, and I've been so fortunate to have the tools in my toolbox and the resources available to me to heal me and help me be a thriving entrepreneur, a professional, a good dad, all those things. But yeah, I don't want anybody to be in that position, man.
Yeah.
You know, it's
definitely puts things in this perspective, man. Were your kids with you that day?
Unfortunately, no.
I bet you hugged them so fucking tight, man.
God, every day. Home. Yeah.
I mean, geez.
It's, you know, there's a lot of things of that day that people still tell me, remember when I called you during that? And I'm like, I was in fight or flight. I was in shock.
Survival mode. Yeah, absolutely.
Know? And I'm no longer married now, but at the time I was. And I remember, fortunately, my then wife, my 2 kids were at a family barbecue, and I was going to meet them after the parade. Thank God is right. And I remember calling my then wife saying, like, well, what happened initially was about 30 minutes after the shots were fired was the first time I was able to catch my breath and able to, like, have a little bit of sense of safety and some security, where I texted my mom, my dad, my 2 sisters, and my wife. And I didn't know what else to say, but all I said was, I'm safe. And they didn't know what was going on. They weren't, chills, And I said, I'm safe. And they didn't know what was going on. They weren't tied to the news. You know, they were doing their 4th of July stuff, and they didn't know what was going on. And so, like, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? Like, what, safe from what? Safe from what? And then I called my wife, and, you know, one of the things that was hardest is, you know, my son overheard our conversation. Right. And a couple times after, and it's not been since, thankfully, you know, they were younger at the time, but like, he said, Daddy, what happened if you would have died? Like, whoa, like, if that doesn't put things into perspective, I don't know what will. And I'm thankful they weren't there. I'm thankful they have little recollection due to their age. But they're aware of it, and I talk with them about it. And, you know, when I was in the thick of my PTSD and so many of my symptoms and outcomes have subsided, learning over time, so much of it was environmental, just removing myself from Highland Park.
Yeah, I bet, man.
Like, and what I say, like, you know, and not to be crass about it, but if we had a sexual assault victim who was assaulted in a shopping mall, right? We would never encourage that victim to go back to that mall, right?
You're just naturally going to have those same emotions.
Yeah, but think about, from my perspective, I was traumatized as an employee, expected to go back to my employer.
Right.
Or think about these poor teachers in school shootings. Like, they're a 30-year teacher. They know nothing else but teaching.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great point.
And now they're going to have, their school district's going to force them back in the same school, in the same classroom, to see the same faces and expect them to just put on a happy face and be the same teacher they always were. That's not how we're wired. No. And so removing myself from Highland Park has been such a great healing tool that I never knew I needed, because back then I was fighting to stay in Highland Park.
Yeah, right.
Right? Like, this is my job. This is my community, not realizing that it was the worst thing for me. You know?
What would you say to people out there that are struggling right now, you know, from a mental health perspective? They're going through some tough times. They've had a loss. They've, you know, whatever it might be. I think it's whether you're successful or not. There's wildly successful people that feel empty inside and are going through a lot. And there's people that are not having a lot of success and feel terrible as well. So what's kind of your general advice to people that are going through a tough time? Yeah,
be approachable and be vulnerable, right? There's going to be people in your life, as there was in mine, who recognize a change in you, to say, hey, Alex, or hey, Bill, or hey, Chris, you're not who I know you to be. Are you okay? And too many times, particularly as men, but in general, as a tough society, I'm fine. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with me, right? Yeah. So being approachable and, you know what, thank you for noticing in that. What have you noticed differently about me? And we could talk about that, right? So being approachable is critical. And then being vulnerable in what you're really experiencing, right? Once again, too many times people are like, well, I see something is going on with you, but you're telling me not, so you're hiding something, right? Be forthcoming about what it is you're experiencing, because two things will happen. One, you'll find out who your tribe really is, who really has your back, and who's in your circle for the right reasons, right? And you will feel so much more lighter when you just put those thoughts out into the world, right? And to a degree, after being diagnosed with PTSD, insomnia, depression, and anxiety from that day, the fact that I've been so forthcoming about it has allowed me to heal so much faster.
That's right.
And that's not to say that that's for everybody, right? You have to find what works for you. But all I want folks to know, if I may say, is that you're worth it. Whatever you need in your life, you're worth finding that resource. You're worth pursuing that care. You deserve it, frankly, because you only have one life. And, you know, I'm here to help instill that in others.
Chris, this has been an absolute honor to have you on the show, man. This was such a good conversation. I appreciate you sharing everything. Where can people go to find you, get in touch with you, listen to the podcast? Plug away. We'll add it in the links, obviously, the description.
Appreciate it. This has been great, and you've been nothing but kind and welcoming, and your energy is infectious. And I've been excited. Yeah, I've been so exciting to get here. And you know, anytime I could share my story, but when I can share it with great folks like you, means the world. So thank you for that, and thank you for having me. But if anybody wants to connect with me, I'm very active on LinkedIn, Chris Maliszewski. Otherwise, you could find me on Instagram at Walking Tall Chris. And then two websites, www.hailhailauctions.com. We also have a YouTube channel under Hail Hail Auctions where you can find all of our content there. And then as it relates to the mental health advocacy, the Walking Tall movement, it's www.walkingtallmovement.com. We also have a YouTube channel where we bring on guests of experiencing significant trauma and mental health hurdles, and we focus on the triumphant return. So this coming Friday, we have a live show with a Boston Marathon bombing survivor who lost his right leg. He was 3 feet from the bomb.
My goodness.
But, you know, that's been another, real quick, like that's been another great outcome of being vulnerable, is you meet so many inspiring people and you meet so many other stories because people know they're safe to share with you.
That's right.
And so, yeah, Friday we have Mark Fukarile coming on, who is just a beacon of hope nationally and tells his story in such great detail, but also with great focus on mental health and empowerment. So yeah, and I'm just here, man. Like if you want my cell phone, I'll give it out. Like whatever it is, like I just want people to be uplifted, and I want to make the world a better place.
Yeah, I love it, man. Hopefully, I'm sure this inspired people out there. We talked a little business, we talked a little mental health and personal stuff, and maybe this will cause a few people to stand up and open up and be a little bit vulnerable and get the help they need. So
I hope, I say if one person is helped, this work is worth it.
Yep, that's right. Appreciate you being on the show, brother.
Appreciate it. Thank you.